And welcome to the 2020 Film Independent Forum. I'm Jen Wilson, Senior Programmer for the year-round member screening program, Film Independent Presents. Now I'm very excited to introduce our guests from the forum's opening night film, Magnolia Pictures and Topic Studios, The Fight. Welcome the film's directors, Elise Steinberg, Josh Kriegman, and Eli B. Dupre, and the film's producer, Kerry Washington. And finally, welcome the main subjects of the film, ACLU lawyers Bridget Amiri, Lee Gellert, Dale Ho, and Joshua Black. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
yes.
Hi.
For the directors and the producers, do you just want to start off talking about the origins of this film and what was the inspiration for making a doc about the ACLU?
Sure. Thanks so much for having us. This is a feeling of like our real virtual premiere, and I'm just so excited to have everybody put on a nice shirt. Woo-hoo! So thank you all who are watching. We're just so happy to have this film officially out in the world. So the way this film began was, as you saw in the opening of the film, it was 7 days into Trump's inauguration when he issued his Muslim ban. And on that night, I joined the protesters that were gathering on the steps of the Brooklyn courthouse. And inside, Lee, who's with us now, was arguing for an emergency stay of Trump's order. And I was just steps away from him when he emerged. His fists were raised high, and I could see the expression on his face, just joy and shock and just totally overwhelmed at the crowds of people that were chanting ACLU. And it was in that moment that I felt like this was the film that we needed to make. My team, Josh and Eli and I felt like we needed to be with Lee and the lawyers at the ACLU in their legal fight against the Trump administration for the next 3 years. I felt like this was one of those big epic moments in history that needed to be documented, and it really was this like documentary calling.
What actually happened is the day after Elise was there, she came rushing into our office and practically broke down the door and made a beeline straight for our whiteboard where we have development ideas for future projects. And she grabbed an eraser and erased them all. And she wrote The Fight. And she said to Eli and I, we have to get into the ACLU and tell the story of them, fighting against Trump. And it was like one of those sort of eureka moments where we all looked at each other and said, yeah, that's what we have to do. And so off we went.
And then, Kerry, at what point did you come onto the project? And do you want to talk a little bit about what attracted you to work on this?
Sure. Well, I didn't know that I had soulmates on the other side of the country, but basically on this same night, I was glued to my television, like devastated that I was in Los Angeles, and I was sending pizzas to the airports in New York and to the outside the courthouse and figuring out like, what can I do to help? And that night I was saying to my husband, like, who's on the ground with these people? And I called my team, the agents and lawyers kind of folks. And I said, like, who is on the ground with these people? Like, somebody has got to be in the trenches on the ground with these lawyers. And they were like, yeah, one of the best teams in documentary filmmaking just had that same idea. And I was like, yes, let's do it. Like, what can I do to help? And how can I be of service? And so we just kind of decided to make this happen together.
Having a mind meld with Kerry Washington is like the best thing ever. Just if you can do it, just so grateful.
I was such huge fans of theirs. I thought that Wiener was such an extraordinary film and really so captivating. And I thought these are the perfect filmmakers, right? Because they can somehow simultaneously build immaculate trust with their subject while also somehow being invisible, like disappearing into the wall. And so I thought, the lawyers could trust these people. And they're such great artists and storytellers.
So how is it that you chose the 5 lawyers that we see in the film, the other one being Chase Strangio, who couldn't be with us tonight? Did you do interviews with a lot of the other ACLU lawyers? And and then choose specific ones depending on the cases they had, or what was that process?
They were just the cutest ones. No, I'm just kidding.
It was easy. I mean, once Lee was our first, and Elise stalked him, and effectively, apparently, and these continue to be the biggest, most important cases and issues at the center of the conflict of American life right now. And it did not hurt that the attorney at the forefront of the reproductive rights fight is incredibly charming and smart and quirky, and that the pair of lawyers who were doing the trans case, ban in the military, have this sort of Laurel and Hardy bantery wit, or that the person prosecuting the family separation case is this monster in the courtroom who can barely tie his own shoes. That was fun for us. And that the guy who's fighting the Census case happens to be this pugilist in the courtroom with a sense of humor and an impish smile. The combination of how important these cases were and sort of how charismatic. I mean, they really lit us up, and we had to spend the next 3.5 years with them.
I mean, not to mention the fact that Bridget and Mary looks just like Carrie Brownstein. You could just watch the whole movie thinking about Slater-Kinney the whole time.
I'm framing that. That is the best news clip that I've ever seen about me. I was just saying, like before, that's going on my wall.
So right away after I finished watching this film, each time, I mean, I watched it I saw it at Sundance. Congratulations on your award at Sundance. And I wanted to know right away what was the status of each one of these cases. So I was wondering if each lawyer could take us through what's currently going on with the case that you were trying in the film. And let's start with Bridget Amiri. There was something else I wanted to ask you. So your case was on abortion rights for people seeking asylum in the United States.
Yes, and who were denied access to abortion. And Jane Doe courageously stood up to the Trump administration when she was physically blocked from leaving the shelter where she was staying to access abortion. And after she got the abortion, after a court battle that lasted weeks, she then decided to become the class representative for class action to make sure that this didn't happen to young women like her in shelters going forward. And before we secured that class action, there were a number of other young women who contacted us who we had to rush into court for. So we represented a number of individuals, but then also got this class action and got a preliminary block on this policy that prevents the government from obstructing or interfering with access to abortion for unaccompanied immigrant minors. And that's the status right now. We've succeeded in keeping that preliminary injunction through the appeals courts. And we're actually now the government has decided to issue a policy that is trying to address some of these issues. And we're back in the lower courts now. And, you know, I just have such tremendous respect for Jane Doe, the original Jane Doe, and just want to let people know that she's doing well and that she is with family members in the United States who she wanted to be with, and she continues to seek asylum, and that request is also pending.
All right. Thank you. Next is Lee Gallant, who was trying the immigrant people seeking asylum being separated from their children. I salute you with a Diet Coke, Lee Gallant. I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. And thank you for having us. Yeah, unfortunately, this case is still going on. There was enormous public outcry during the summer of 2018 when we went to court, and the film captures that. We need that public outcry again, because there are still hundreds and hundreds of families we are still looking for. Families whose names the government didn't reveal until the very end. The phone numbers we have, to the extent we have them, are now stale because it's been so many years. And so our partners have been going door to door on the ground in Central America looking for the families. And now because of COVID, we've had to stop that. So this is still a serious situation, trying to reunite all these families. And the government has also tried to go around the court orders in recent months by continuing to separate families on the pretext that the parent is a danger. And then we find out that the parent may have committed a theft offense, a nonviolent theft offense, for $100 15 years ago. And the government claims, well, the parent's a danger to the child. So it's unfortunately still a serious issue, and we're hoping to make public aware that it's still going on, because there are still little children out there who we haven't found yet.
So does this mean that some of these people have actually been deported while their children are still held here in the United States?
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's exactly why we're having so much trouble finding. The government deported many of the parents without their children. Often they would say to the parent, oh, don't worry, your child will meet you at the plane. And then the plane would take off and the child wouldn't be there. Just horrendous situations that happen hundreds and hundreds of times. So the child may now be in the US, the parent is somewhere in Central America. We're searching for the parent to find out what the situation is. Have they been able through self-help to get their child back? But it's just still an horrendous situation.
So let's talk to Dale Ho. Dale, are you were trying the case where there was a citizenship question on the census. What's the status of that? And with the election coming up, are you on a lot of cases to do with voter fraud?
So I can say, and answer your last question, we're in a lot of cases right now trying to make sure that everyone can vote safely during the pandemic. We normally, an election year is a busy year for us, and we'll file, maybe half a dozen new cases in the spring or summer. As of today, we have filed 17 cases since the start of March, just trying to make sure that everyone can vote safely right now, which is a real challenge. With this once-in-a-century pandemic that we have. With respect to the census case, the film shows the victory in the Supreme Court, which was great. That normally, when you win in the Supreme Court, that normally brings a case to a conclusion. That ended up not being true here. We ended up skirmishing with the administration for another few weeks afterwards. If you'll recall, the Supreme Court ruled that the attempt to put a citizenship question on the census was illegal because the president and his administration lied about the reason why they wanted a citizenship question on the census. So for a few weeks afterwards, the administration toyed with the idea of being honest about it and saying, well, here's really why we wanted to put the citizenship question on the census. Now we're going to do it all over again. Those efforts failed, and about a month after the decision, they gave up the fight and finally abandoned it. But that only lasted for a year, because just last week, the president announced that he is going to try to just exclude undocumented immigrants altogether from the census. And it's one of the most blatantly unconstitutional acts I've ever witnessed. The Constitution says that the census is supposed to count every person in the United States, that representation in Congress is based on the whole number of persons in the United States. And the administration has taken the kind of shocking position that undocumented immigrants are not people. So we filed our lawsuit last Friday, a week ago, and we're in a race. The census numbers are supposed to be delivered at the end of the year on December 31st. So we don't have a lot of time to try to get this resolved.
Last, Joshua Block, your case was on transgender people in the military.
Yeah, so where things left off in the movie was that the original ban on all trans people serving had been enjoined by the courts. And so they came up with a new ban that let current service members stay, but said no new people can enlist. And even though all the lower courts had said that's also unconstitutional, the Supreme Court had, by a 5-4 vote, let the administration put that into effect. So since then, like, we're still challenging that new ban, and it's justified by claiming that the military put together some independent report saying that it makes sense to not let trans people enlist. And as Dale just mentioned, this administration is not known for its truthfulness. So we're sort of fighting tooth and nail to see every document, that allegedly supports that new policy. But as a practical matter, our best shot at getting the policy repealed is having a change in administration. That lifting this ban is something that a new administration could do on day one. And I think if you want to get the ban lifted, the most important thing and the most effective thing that could happen is to have a change in who sits in the Oval Office.
I'm just wondering, it's interesting, for the lawyers and the filmmakers, I guess, do you feel like this is the time that we're in now during the Trump presidency has been the most challenging time for the ACLU in its history?
Lee's the veteran. Lee's
Yeah.
been there longer than any of us. So we defer to Lee on the questions of history.
I will start and give my old person's perspective on it. I have been there now close to 30 years. I would say yes, this is the most challenging. The only, probably by far, but the only thing in my experience that's come close is right after 9/11. That was extremely difficult because there was real fear, understandably. And when there's real fear, it's very hard to get through to people and talk about civil liberties, whether it's the public or courts. And so, but this has been way worse in the sense that after 9/11, there were civil liberties issues in the immigrants' rights and national security area, but there weren't necessarily stepped up problems in every other area. This has been across the board. Every single part of the ACLU has been working literally, 7 days a week on every issue. And the administration has done so much, and it's been so relentless that I think it's been by far the worst. And it's not only the practical policy changes the administration is enacting, but it's also the rhetoric and how divisive it is, and how much the administration is attacking vulnerable communities and making people feel vulnerable. That I do think that this is by far the most difficult and challenging period I've been in the 30 years I've been at the ACLU.
For regular citizens who are not ACLU lawyers, besides giving money to the ACLU during this time, how do you lawyers feel like what is the best way to support the ACLU? Lee, you said something about it would help your case if there was more of a public outcry about what's going on. Do you see other ways? Do you think there should be more journalism on some of these issues that are going on?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just want to sort of throw out there is on aclu.org, there are a variety of ways to get involved besides giving money. But yeah, I think public outcry really can't be underestimated how important that is. I think every civil rights lawyer feels that any lasting structural civil rights changes cannot be done solely through the courts and really need that public component, that mobilization. I think you make a good point about journalism. I think the more the media can cover it and let people know what's going on, the better. I think there's a variety. And then there's, as sort of Kerry has pointed out, there are just little things everyone can do. I always say just be nice to one immigrant today, and that's, a good thing and helpful. It can be a variety of ways to get involved, but I'll let my colleagues jump in or Kerry jump in on other things to do. But it's definitely not solely through the courts. I think that's critical. There's ways to help different organizations and things, but I'll let my colleagues jump in.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I
There's-
think there's always something that people can do. I mean, you know, whether it's volunteering time or voting, you know, filling out the census form, they're having conversations. I mean, one of the big issues, one of the big things that fuels abortion restrictions is stigma against abortion, and having conversations with other people to really talk about abortion and normalize that abortion is healthcare and critical healthcare that people need, I think is important too. So there are so many different ways to make change.
There's an amazing scene in this movie. I wanted to ask the directors whose idea it was to include this segment where each lawyer reads their own hate mail.
It's a collective
I think
brain.
it's a collective. I think we were like, I'm trying to think. You know what it was? I had heard about Lee getting some hate mail, and then I asked Chase if he got hate mail, and he said, "Oh, you have no idea." And actually Chase, who's getting it, was he said, "It's really important for me that you read the hate mail." Like, he felt that it is a part of what he deals with every day as a civil rights lawyer. And it's just like, he puts himself out there on Twitter, and he gets a lot of hate. And that, and I also, one of the receptionists who works at the ACLU, who's been there forever, told me that she gets, during holiday season, I mean, I guess you guys can talk about what Cheryl gets, she gets a lot of, great cards that would say, ACLU, Merry Christmas, ACLU, Happy Holidays, and then ACLU, go blank yourself.
Right.
A lot of like really holiday cards, happy holiday cards mixed with a lot of, we do not like you, ACLU. And I thought that was an interesting thing that was happening, and that it was like, would have been a great way to something that we could showcase, but also play a little bit with too.
I think it really works to humanize the lawyers. I think that's one of the things that's so powerful about it, because we tend to think of the ACLU as this monolithic institution. And I think what these brilliant filmmakers do is they really allow you to see that while these guys are truly superheroes, I mean, they are the closest thing we have to a real Justice League, they are also just people, right? They're parents who are desperately trying to get their kids to be quiet on Zoom calls, which we all identify with now, and they're, moms having train wine, and their dads losing their cell phone chargers. Like, they are us. And I think one of the reasons why that's so important, to your earlier question, is because we hope that audiences do have a deeper respect for these real life superheroes, but we also hope that audiences ask themselves, like, how can I be part of the fight? That thing that Dale says at the end of the film, that they can't do it alone. When you watch the film, you realize if these are just people, then I'm a person too. And how can I use whatever skills I have? It may not be a law degree, but I might be able to make phone calls or drive people to the polls, or call 10 family members and tell them to fill out their census, or call my lawmakers. Whatever it is that I can do, I can step into this fight too, because they are just regular people doing extraordinary things. And we all have the ability to be regular people who make extraordinary choices, particularly now.
Are there, I guess my question is, are there lawyers who get more hate mail than other lawyers? And are those issues, what are those issues around? I mean, I have a guess what they are.
Well, I mean, I think it's absolutely true. Like, I maybe have gotten 1 or 2 pieces of hate mail, every year, every other year, or something like that, that I think anyone who has been, trying to speak in social media or anywhere else knows that a price of speaking for people who are not, generally white men, is that you get a ton of hate in response. It's this constant barrage, and so I think it's just when Chase is out there as, a trans person, like, his identity is, part of his advocacy and is subject to attack. And, people feel empowered to write horrible things to Bridget or to talk about Dale, based on, his ethnicity. And I just think it's important that I love how the movie gets that across, that, some people in the office like carry a much heavier burden than other people. And that's true just for everyone at large.
There's I saw a short film a few months ago, and I wish I could remember the name of it while we're on this, but it's about an ICE hotline in San Francisco that's run out of San Francisco, and a quarter of their calls are hate calls. And so the documentary showcases people genuinely calling for help because they're being detained by ICE, and people calling to complain about them supporting people being detained by ICE, and it's quite chilling, but also I think has the same effect of what you're doing in this, in balancing it out. There's also the extremely heartwarming scene of Bridget getting the handwritten letter in pencil that says, oh, your connection, the lawyer's connection with the public and the ACLU's connection with the public is mixed. It's not all one thing. It is a lot of people saying, ACLU, please help me. And before I saw that, I really did not know that you could write to the ACLU and get help, or call up the ACLU and just be like, can you please help me, and talk to a person. I had no idea that that's actually the way that this works. What percentage of your cases are taken that way by someone from the public calling or writing?
I think it's really mixed, and I think for the different projects, it's really different. In the Reproductive Freedom Project, where I sit, we have these individual requests for access to abortion where the government is restricting. In this context, in the movie Jane Doe, we've also had cases where individuals have contacted us where they have been incarcerated in a jail or a prison. And so those individual circumstances, we assess, and if there is a way that we can jump in and help, we do. But a lot of our work in the Reproductive Freedom Project space is on behalf of clinics challenging restrictions that have been passed by the legislature that either try to ban abortion or push abortion out of reach. And we represent the clinic on behalf of their patients. And so I would say most of our cases are brought that way as opposed to individuals, but there is this segment of cases like the Jane Doe case that comes through an individual.
I'm wondering, do you get calls from people who are calling because they've observed something that's being done in secret in some state, and that's the only reason that the state government or whatever's going on there is getting away with it because it's secret? Do you get a lot of calls revealing things like this?
Yeah, we do, and some. Sorry, I think I might be frozen.
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. We do get a lot of those calls. You're right. And, often we will know about the problem and be looking into it, or it's something that we think is ultimately legal for the state to do. But that is an important source of information for us as whistleblowers, or people know about something. The other thing about the ACLU that's, I think, makes us effective in ways that other civil rights organizations maybe can't, is that we have state affiliates. And so there's a local ACLU in every state, and they're closer to the ground than we are at the national office. So they will often get a call from the public because they will be right there, in those communities. And then the local ACLU will call us and say, there's a problem here. So that often is the way it comes. It's including what you're suggesting, sort of things are happening in secret, and this person got a letter from the FBI and no one else knows about it, and the FBI is trying to do this in secret.
Okay. I'm wondering, for the filmmakers and the lawyers, how is it for the lawyers who are not used to having their lives on camera? sort of what was it like trying to get used to allowing cameras to follow you around? I assume for how many years were you actually following them?
It was over 3 years.
Wow. That sort of, was it uncomfortable and self-conscious in the beginning? Did you eventually forget the cameras were there for the lawyers? Nobody wants to comment.
No, I think we're all just being polite. Like we always like defer to everyone. So like we're always afraid to like jump in and start talking. I'll briefly answer. I mean, I think that at first I was very guarded, especially I was concerned after seeing Wiener, which I had not seen until after they started filming. And I started thinking, oh no, like what did I get myself into? But then eventually it wasn't just that were a fly on the wall, they became friends. And the cinematographer, Sean McGing, was with me. I was spending more time with him than I was spending with my own husband for periods of time. And it really became like having a friend in the room. He is just a lovely, wonderful person, and building that trust was, I think, really crucial to allowing us to drop some of that guardedness.
By the way, Sean misses you so much. So he very misses you guys all. We're going to see him later, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it would not have worked with other filmmakers. I think this kind of film required an enormous amount of trust. And I think just not only from us individually, but from the ACLU as an institution, because there's so much sensitive information, attorney-client information, the client's personal lives that can't get out there for a variety of reasons, including it could put them in danger. So I think the only reason it ultimately worked is that there was this trust, and we built this trust with them. But I think we were all probably nervous in the beginning, and I think at the end of the day, we all made a decision that on balance, it was so important to get the stories of the clients out there, and that this was one critical way of doing it, to break through all the clutter, because there's just so much out there, so much in the news, that this was on balance the way to do it. And so that we sort of all put aside our hesitation and our nervousness about it, and then it became easier. And I think we all sort of, by the end, got used to the cameras being there, and it became not a big deal.
Okay, I'm going to take some audience questions. First one is, for the filmmakers, were there any legal constraints that you had to consider while making the doc? For example, footage, etc.
Well, I mean, going in, I just what Lee was saying, I think, getting access was not easy to the ACLU. I mean, if, you're dealing with lawyers, a whole building full of them, not the easiest subject for a documentary to get access to. But it was after many months, many conversations, that the organization realized that, this was a moment that we needed to document so that everyone could see, and a moment for history. That it was just, yes, there was a risk of letting a verite filmmaking team, yes, a filmmaking team who did Wiener, but you know what? The stakes are too high. This is a moment like, civil rights in the 60s that this doesn't happen often. And we need this story told, and we need the story told now. So I think everyone realized that this was super important. But going in, there was a ground rule, which was that you could kick us out at any time, which we were kicked out a lot, spent a lot of time outside the office waiting, lots of pictures of Sean waiting and hanging out. And then, of course, being sensitive to attorney-client privilege. And but we had complete and total creative independence, which is what we have with all our projects.
Jen, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Dale, are you writing a brief right now? I'm looking at the reflection in your glasses. I think you're working.
I closed my laptop right before we started, I promise.
It's a video game.
I was writing in the minutes leading up to the start of this. It's true.
It's good. It's good.
This is not a question, but a comment. This panel is an incredible group of American social warriors. Agree. And I appreciate your work on this film immeasurably. This film will stay with me forever. Thank you. I agree with
Thank
that
you,
sentiment.
whoever wrote that. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was probably my dad, but thank you. Whoever
Somebody else says, thank God for the ACLU. But there are also a lot of other organizations involved in each of the issues addressed. Is there coordination with these organizations in terms of the ACLU's various lawsuits, and how does that work?
Bridget, you talk about this a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think all of us feel a little sheepish because we are in the film, but there are so many people that are working on these cases and working on these issues that are supporting these cases. A huge team, not just at the ACLU National Office and the affiliates at the ACLU, but our partner organizations on the ground. And it's a tremendous effort, and it really happens organically. We have relationships with these other organizations, and we are all working towards the same goal. And that is one of the wonderful things of doing this work, is working with these amazing colleagues. And so just huge shout out to everyone who deserves so much credit, and they are not seen in the film. And I just have so much gratitude for them.
Thank you. Okay, could everyone, filmmakers and lawyers, I don't think we have time for everybody to speak on this, but they're asking about the section in the film that's about the Charlottesville incident and the heat that the ACLU took over it, unfairly or otherwise. Does anybody want to make a comment about Charlottesville?
We need Chase for this. Chase is always the one who takes this question.
This is Chase's special.
Josh, do you want to channel Chase?
I mean, well, Chase would say, yeah, like I think Chase has, just publicly, said he disagrees with the decision, and, I mean, he hasn't been shy about very vocally voicing his disagreement, and, I think all of us have, different feelings about what call we would have made if we were the decision maker. I don't think anyone in the building disagrees about the underlying legal principle at stake in those cases. The question is just when you're an organization that has finite resources, which vehicles do you pick to put those resources in to vindicate that principle? And I think the different views within the organization are displayed in the film. And I think it's a pretty, accurate representation.
And, I'll just say that, while we were filming, the way it is in the film is the way we experienced it. We were following the lawyers, and then suddenly Charlottesville happened, and it was this gut punch. And what we saw was a lot of heated conversations, a lot of debate, it was a painful moment at the ACLU. And it was something that I think as filmmakers, we felt that was crucial that we included in the film. And I think that one of the things that I've taken away from it is that, some of these rights that we talk about and we argue about, they can feel abstract. And what you see here is it's not abstract. It's very real, and real lives are at stake. And I think that was just something that was just very important that we showcase.
Well, we're out of time, but I want to re-express the sentiments that you're all American social warriors. Thank you. Thank you to the ACLU lawyers for everything that you do and all the time that you give. You're American heroes to me, and I'm sure to many, many, many Americans. Thank you to the directors and to Carrie for making this project. If one of you directors and producer had to make an elevator pitch for why you think someone should check out this documentary, what is it?
I mean, what I love about this movie is that it's not just it's unbelievably important, but it's really thrilling to watch these people do this heroic work. It is a legal action thriller. For me, so much of this fight has been, I feel terrible all the time. I feel, and it's inspiring to watch these guys swing into action like Tarzan and wrestle the legal alligators back into the river. It makes me feel good. So I say, if you want to feel good, see the damn movie.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so much hope. There's so much hope in the film, you know, because every morning you feel like you wake up and you're confronted with a new attack on some front. It could be police violence against Black bodies. It can be immigrants' rights or abortion rights or voting rights. And you think, like, how can I have an impact? But now, once you hear these stories and you get to know these lawyers, you know that they are swooping in. Like, whatever it is that we are terrified about right now, these are the guys who wake up in the morning and suit up and show up to meet the challenge. So it's incredibly hopeful.
I think that's exactly right. On some level, I think we felt like we were cheating over the last few years, getting to hang out with these lawyers and soak up, you know, feelings of hope and inspiration. And the film is just it's a chance to share that with the world.
So for anybody who didn't get to check out this film yet, it's available everywhere on VOD today, right?
Yes.
To rent, I believe through your local art house cinema, but also, is it also on for rent on iTunes and everywhere?
Amazon, everywhere.
Everywhere.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Congratulations, everybody.
FightTheFilm.com. I believe they have 90,000 ways to watch the movie.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thank everybody.